Welcome to the second past paper run through. Remember, I won't be going through the 6-mark question answers in this video because they're a bit too complicated and long, so you need to make sure you get those from your teacher before you leave the room. And as before, remember you've got all these equations at the front of your exam, so if there's any physics questions where you've got to use numbers, make sure you look at these equations before you start answering the question, because very often the equation will be there that you need. So this first question requires you to label this diagram of the eye. It says the diagram shows an eye of a short-sighted person looking at a distant object. It says complete the diagram by adding the 2 missing labels. Choose labels from this list. So there's 5 different words there, and what you could do is go through each word and just think about which part of the eye they are. So the lens is this part here. The pupil is the hole in the middle of the eye, so that's that part there. The retina is at the back of the eye, that's where the image gets formed. And so this part here is pointing to the iris. So you should have iris here, and then the other one, that's the bit going to the brain, which is the optic nerve. So that is the optic nerve. So you get 2 marks, you've got those 2 right, 1 for each label. Then it says the following statements give some features of short sight. Put ticks next to the 2 correct statements. So the first one is that if you're short-sighted, distant objects cannot be seen clearly. So that's the top one. And then the second one you can look at the diagram for. So if you look, these are the rays of light coming in, and you can see that this point where they cross is where it's focused. And so you can see it gets focused before the retina. And so the second one is that the light rays are focused before the retina. Next question says, scientists have found a rare genetic disorder that can cause short sight, and it's called nanophlemosis. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but what it's called doesn't really matter. It's caused by a recessive copy of a gene. Write about where in a cell genes are found. So genes are found in DNA, or you could, for that first mark, say in chromosomes, and that is found in the nucleus. So you get a mark for each of those. So you get a mark for saying in DNA, or you could say in or on the chromosomes, sorry, and the second mark for saying that's in the nucleus. Next question says, look at this part of the family tree, showing some people with this disease. It says, this disease is caused by a recessive allele. How can you tell this from this family tree? So the first thing is that both Seema and John don't have the disorder. Now remember, a recessive gene is one which will only take effect if both your parents give you that gene. So if you have a recessive gene and a dominant gene, then the dominant one will have the effect rather than the recessive one. So this diagram shows that both Seema and John have a dominant gene, which means they don't show this short-sightedness. However, 2 of their kids do, which means that both Seema and John must have given these children the recessive gene that they're carrying. So to get these marks, all you've got to say is the first thing is that both Seema and John do not have the disorder. And then, but they have children that do. So it doesn't need any more complicated explanation than that. Just say that both Seema and John have the disorder. Both Seema and John don't have the disorder, but their children do, or you could just say, but Kevin does. Doesn't matter that there's more than one that has it. If it's just one of their children that has it, then that would prove that it's a recessive gene. Now, as before, I'm missing out the 6-mark question, 2A, but 2B is that he only chose to plot only 6 results from the many countries that he studied. So if you put a tick in there, then that's your answer. So moving on to 3A, it says, Tim and Daisy are discussing the illegal drug cannabis. Tim says, I think cannabis should be a Class B drug. Cannabis makes reflex action slower. It contains the chemical THC, which makes it hard to give up. It can also affect long-term memory. Daisy says, I don't think cannabis should be a Class B drug. It is easier to give it up than it is to give up tobacco. It only produces mild hallucinogenic effects. And it It says, Tim says that cannabis slows reflex actions. And what is a reflex action? So there's 2 marks here. So the first mark is just saying that it's a fast response or a quick reaction. So a fast response or a quick reaction, that is automatic, and that's the second mark. So first mark, fast response or quick reaction, and second mark is just saying that it's automatic or that you don't have to think about it. That would also get you the mark there. You could also get a mark for saying that it protects the body. So a reflex action is there to protect the body. Data says that cannabis has a hallucinogenic effects, rather than with one other drug that has these sorts of effects. So LSD is the main one, but you could also have, if you wrote magic mushrooms or PCP or ketamine, then those would also get your mark. You cannot have cocaine, heroin, alcohol or ecstasy. Those do not cause hallucinogenic effects. Next question. Data says that tobacco is harder to give up than cannabis. Suggests why this is. So, you could have 2 of any of these 2 points. You could either say it is more addictive. That'll get you a mark. You could say it contains nicotine. That'll get you a mark. And you can also get a mark for saying it has more withdrawal effects. So any 2 of those get those 2 marks. So either it's more addictive, it contains nicotine, or it has more withdrawal effects. And next question. Scientists have tried to work out how dangerous cannabis is. Giving cannabis to kill rats. Giving cannabis to rats kills them with a dose of about 750 milligrams per kilogram of rat. Work out a dose that would kill a 100 kilogram person. Assume that cannabis has the same effect on humans as rats. So if you need 750 milligrams for every kilogram, and the person weighs 100 kilograms, then all you have to do here is 100 times 750. So that answer would be 75,000. Next question says, scientists compare the danger of drugs by working out their therapeutic ratio. This is worked out by this formula here. And so the data in the table is for a 100 kilogram man. So we can put in a lethal dose that we just worked out in the last question, 75,000 for cannabis. And so it asks us to work out this number here, therapeutic ratio. So all we've got to do is divide the lethal dose by the smallest dose needed. So here's the lethal dose, and that's the smallest dose needed. So it's going to be 75,000 divided by 15, and that equals 5,000. Which drug do the scientists think is most dangerous? And it says use the data to explain your answer. So the first mark, well, there's no mark actually. So the first thing is you got to say that heroin is the drug that scientists think is most dangerous, but you don't get a mark for that. You only get a mark for the reasons. So these any 2 of these 3 things you get the marks for. So a mark for saying it has the smallest lethal dose, a mark for saying it has the smallest therapeutic ratio. You could get a mark for saying it's most likely to have an overdose, as the smallest dose is needed to have an effect is closest to lethal dose. So because this number is closer to this number than these numbers are to these numbers, then you're more likely to have an overdose, because you have to use this much heroin to get an effect. But it's not much more to a lethal dose. So any 2 of those 3 things. So it has the smallest lethal dose, has the smallest therapeutic ratio, or we could say you're more likely to have an overdose as this number is closer to this number than these numbers are. Next question says, suggest one argument against the use of rats in this study. So you could say that it's cruel, that will get you a mark, or unethical. You can't get a mark for saying it kills them or it harms them. You've got to say that it's cruel. Or you could say that the drugs may not have the same effects on rats as on people. Again, you have to make sure that you don't say rats aren't humans. That wouldn't get you the mark. You have to say that the drugs may not have the same effects on the rats because they're not humans. That will get you the mark. So on to the chemistry section. It says this question is about carbon compounds. Look at the displayed formulas of some compounds. There they are. And it says write down the name of a compound that is a hydrocarbon. Choose from the compound shown. So remember, a hydrocarbon is made of hydrogen and carbon only. So ethanoic acid has 2 oxygens in it, that's not hydrocarbon. Ethanol has an oxygen in it, and methanol has an oxygen in it. But ethene and methane both are only made of carbon and hydrogen. So you can either put methane or you can put ethene here to get the mark there. Then it says, look at the displayed formula of ethanol. How many atoms are shown in the displayed formula? So remember, just counting these symbols. So in ethanol, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 atoms. So the answer there is 9. And then many ethene molecules react to make a polymer. Write down the name of this polymer. So to write down the name of a polymer, you take first the name of the alkene that's making it. So write down ethene, and then all you have to do to make the polymer name is just put poly in front of it. Simple as that. Next question. John and Sue are building a new house. They want to choose the best fuel for their house. They find out some information about 4 possible fuels. There's the information, so they've got each fuel, and then is it easy to use, the annual cost to heat the house, and is it available to this house? And it says, which fuel should John and Sue choose? Explain your choice. So the choice that you make doesn't get a mark, and you should have said oil. It's the reasons behind it that gets the mark. So you have to say oil is easy to use, that'll get your mark, and oil is available, that'll get the other mark. You could have said coal is not easy to use to get the first mark, or natural gas is not available to get you the second mark as well. Next question. John and Sue need to consider other factors apart from ease of use, cost, and availability. Write down 2 other factors they need to consider when choosing a fuel for their house. So you could have 2 of any of these things. You could talk about energy content. You could talk about storage, toxicity, pollution, safety. You could talk about whether it's a solid, liquid, or gas. So any of those things you could have. So you need 2 of those. So 2 out of energy content, whether it's renewable or not, storage, toxicity or poisonous, pollution, physical state, so whether it's solid, liquid, or gas, and whether it's safe or not. And the next question, LPG contains propane gas. Propane burns in oxygen, carbon dioxide and water are made. Write the word equation for this. So, word equations. First start with an arrow, and then find in the question what the products are, and the word that gives away the products are made. So these 2 things are made. So those are our products. So we're going to put carbon dioxide, and the other product you can see is water. So both of those go on the right hand side of the arrow. Then the reactants are things that react together, go on the left side of the reactor. So that's propane and oxygen. So you've got propane here plus oxygen, and that you get that mark. So to do word equations, arrow first, things that are made on the right, things that are being used on the left. Next question is about paint. It says look at the information about 2 different paints. There it is. And it says, what is the job of the pigment in the paint? And the pigment gives the paint its colour. It said, which paint, X or Y, would you expect to spread most easily on the wall? So what you've got to think about is what each of these things does in the paint. So the binding medium is the glue, essentially, that sticks it to the wall. The pigment is what gives it its colour, and the solvent is what thins the paint to make it easy to spread. So paint Y, you'd think, would be easy to spread on the wall because it has more solvent. And so to get those 2 marks, so there's 2 marks for this question, you'd say paint Y, and then you need to say paint Y because it has more solvent. And then say why having more solvent is better. So you say solvent thins the paint, or solvent makes the paint easy to spread. So you won't get a mark just for saying why. You have to say why because it has more solvent, and then solvent thins the paint, or solvent makes the paint easy to spread, for those 2 marks. The next question, paint Y is cheaper than paint X. Suggest 2 reasons why the cheaper paint may not be the best paint to buy. So there's 2 marks, so any 2 of these. So paint Y contains less binding medium, so the pigment will not stick to the wall as well, or something like that. Now go your mark. You could say paint Y contains less pigment, so it may not be as brightly or strongly coloured. And paint Y has less additives, so it will not dry as quickly. So any two of those three things will get you those 2 marks. So the next question is about polymers, which are used to make plastics. Polymers are made in a reaction called polymerization. What happens in a polymerization reaction? So you can say, basically, in a polymerization reaction, lots of small molecules join together. And that's where you get these 2 marks, actually. So you just say, many small molecules get you 1 mark, and then join together gets you the 2nd mark. Now actually what happens is that lots of alkene molecules join together. So if you said many alkene molecules join together, that would also get you 2 marks. Next question says, look at the information about 4 polymers, A, B, C and D. Which polymer would be best for making a washing up bowl? So that would be polymer D. The reason being is it's easy to mould. It's easily coloured, which I suppose is useful if you want to make the washing up bowls different colours, but the fact it's easy to mould, and also if you compare it to the other one that's easy to mould, its melting point is 160. If you chose B, then it would melt when you put hot water into it. So D is the best one to use. And it says, polymers have been described as one of the greatest inventions of the 20th century. However, polymers still cause problems. Write about some of the ways of disposing of polymers. Suggest why chemists are developing new types of polymer to help with disposal problems. So, there's 3 marks here, and you need to give at least 1 way of disposing polymers and at least 1 reason why scientists are developing new types of polymers to get the 3 marks. So you could have any 2 from these things for the first point. So we're talking about ways of disposing polymers. Landfill, burying underground. You could have burning, you could have recycling or reusing or broken down to make other things, or you could say they're cracked. So any 2 of those to get out for these 3 marks, then at least 1 of these you could say scientists developing new polymers so they do not take up valuable space. That's related to the landfill one, I suppose. You could say scientists developing new polymers so that they are disposed of easily by dissolving them. Or you could say scientists developing new polymers that are biodegradable, i.e. they break down easily. So 2 out of landfill, burning, recycling or cracking, and then 1 out of so they don't take up valuable space, so they can be disposed of easily by dissolving, or they are biodegradable, or they break down easily. So on to the last section now, the physics section. So it says, Amir investigated the cooling of 2 different liquids. He used the same mass of each liquid. Look at the graph of his results. There's a graph. Suggests why liquid A cooled more quickly than liquid B at the start. And that's simply because it had a higher temperature to begin with. So that'll get you that 1 mark. It had a higher temperature. Then it says, look at parts X and Y on the graph. What is happening to liquids at parts X and Y on the graph? And if you think about it, they're liquids to begin with. The temperature is cooling, so they're going to turn into solids at that straight line, and so those liquids are freezing. Remember, when something changes state, i.e. goes from a solid to a liquid or a liquid to a gas or vice versa, then its temperature does not change. So that's why it's a straight line there when it's freezing. And then what is energy measured in? You'll get a mark there if you tick joules. Energy is measured in joules. Next question says, John installs a solar water heating unit on the roof of his house. Look at the diagram of this unit. So there it is. There's a dull black container containing the water, double glazed glass on the top, shiny internal surfaces on the sides and below the cylinder, then water out and water in. And it says, energy from the sun travels in electromagnetic waves. Which electromagnetic wave is mainly responsible for heating the water in the solar heating unit? Put a ring around the correct answer, and the correct answer is infrared, none of the others. Then it says, for every 20,000 joules that enter the unit, 16,000 joules heat the water. Calculate the efficiency of this unit. Now, if you look at the front page of your booklet to all the equations, you will see one for efficiency, and efficiency is the amount of useful energy got out divided by the amount of energy put in times 100. So this is going to be 16,000, so that's the amount of useful energy got out of this, divided by total energy put in, which is 20,000. And then once you've done that, times that by 100, and that'll give you 80% efficiency. Next question. The glass top is double glazed. This improves efficiency by reducing energy loss from the solar water heating unit. Explain how. So there's 3 marks here. So first thing you could say is that air is trapped, and that prevents conduction. So 1 mark for saying air is trapped, and that the air or the gap or the vacuum or the glass reduces or prevents conduction. You could also say the air or the gap or the vacuum prevents convection for another mark. Or you could say the infrared is reflected back into the container. So 3 out of those things. So can I say air is trapped, the air or the gap or the vacuum prevents conduction, the air or the gap or the vacuum reduces or prevents convection, and you could also say the infrared is reflected back. The next question says, explain how other design features of the water heating unit help to heat the water efficiently. So 2 marks here. Firstly, there's the black surface is used because it absorbs heat. You could say soaks up for absorbs, but you can't say attracts. So the black surface absorbs or soaks up heat. And the other good thing, and that's what we'll mark the other one, is that the shiny surfaces are used because they'll reflect the heat back in to hit the cylinder. So 1 mark for saying the black surface absorbs the heat, and then another mark saying the shiny surfaces reflect the heat. Next question, look at the diagram of the water wave. Which letter represents the amplitude of the wave? So the amplitude is E here, so amplitude means height. So that is E, and it says, which letters represent the crest and trough of the wave? So the crest is the highest point of the wave, so that's A, and the trough is the lowest point of the wave, so that's D. The wavelength of the water wave is 5 centimetres. 8 waves pass through a point in 10 seconds. Calculate the speed of the wave. So, first thing you need to do, you've got numbers, so you look in the front of the booklet, and you'll find that wave speed equals frequency times wavelength. So I'm just going to put F and W for those. So the first thing you've got to do is work out the frequency. So frequency is how many waves there are per second. So you've got to do 8 divided by 10 to work out the frequency, and then times that by the wavelength, which is 5. So it's 8 divided by 10 times 5, which is 4 centimetres per second. So that's quite a tricky question that we had to use 2 different formulae to work that out. Then it says, how does the speed of the water wave compare to the speed of an electromagnetic wave travelling in space? So basically the speed of the water wave is a lot less than the speed of an electromagnetic wave. That's all you have to say. Or you could say the electromagnetic wave is much faster than the water wave. So final question. It says, Ricky is learning about analog and digital signals. Look at the diagrams of signals. One of them is a digital signal. Ricky thinks that signal A is a digital signal. Explain why Ricky is incorrect and explain which signal is actually a digital one. So, firstly, if you said that A is analog, or it's continuously changing or variable, that'll get you the first mark. So firstly, just for saying A is analog. And then you need to spot the digital signal, which is D, and then say why. So it's because it's either on or off. There's no continual variable. It's either on or off, or a 1 or a 0 if you wanted to. You could also say that D only has 2 values. So 1 mark for saying that A is analog, and then another mark for saying D because it has either on or off values. And then Ricky learns that digital light signals can be sent along optical fibres. Write down one advantage of using digital signals and optical fibres. So one thing you can say is that you can transfer a lot of data or a large amount of data. But you can also say that there's less interference. You could say there's a better quality signal. And that's it. Make sure you get the 6-mark question answers from the teacher taking this session before you leave the room. And and your paper for next week.